Hello everyone, and welcome to my video on factorizing quadratic equations. And for the introduction, I'm just going to talk about what they are and what we're going to do in this video. So firstly, quadratic equations take the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, and that's equal to 0. And because they're second order polynomials, that means that a, our coefficient of x squared, cannot equal 0. Otherwise, if it does, the highest power of x will not be 2, which means that this can't be a quadratic equation. So that's why a can't equal 0. And here a, b, and c, they're just constants. And the aim of factorization is to try and get this equation here into this form, which is px plus q multiplied, so they're in brackets, multiplied by rx plus x, and that's equal to 0. And this is much easier to solve in this form than it is in this form. And here, p, q, r, and s are also constants as well. And just to clarify what we mean by a, b, and c, I'm going to use the example of 2x squared minus 3x plus 4. Set that equal to 0. In this situation, a, the coefficient of x squared, is 2. So our a is 2. And b, our coefficient of x, is minus 3. And that's because the negative sign is attached to the number after it. So that means b is minus 3. And with quadratic equations, this is something you need to be very careful of. And c, our constant, is positive 4. So c is 4. And in the next section of this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you the method of factorizing on some examples. Okay, so on this screen, I have 3 quadratic expressions. And I'm going to start with this one, x squared plus 5x plus 6. And I'm going to talk you through the method of factorizing it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to identify a, b, and c on this expression here. Now, a is actually 1, because there is an invisible 1 here that we don't write in maths, because 1 times x squared is also x squared, so we don't write it down. So here, a equals 1. B we can clearly see is 5. And c is 6. So no negatives to worry about in this situation. And what we need to do is, we need to find two numbers that when you multiply them equals a times c, or in this case is 6. And when you add them equals b, which in this case is 5. So what two numbers, when you multiply them, give 6, but when you add them, give 5? Well, that's going to be 2 and 3. And what I'm going to do is, this term here, the x term, I'm going to split it up using these two numbers. So if I just rewrite it as x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 6. You can see here that this is 2x and this is 3x, and that these together do make 5x. I've just splitted them up so that now I can factorize it. And what we're going to do is factorize this separately and this separately as well. So to factorize x squared plus 2x, the highest common factor is x, and that means we need x to make x squared, and x times 2 makes 2x. Now we have this bracket here, x plus 2, that automatically means the next bracket will be x plus 2. So you needn't worry thinking about what this one will be. And now what we have to do is, what times x makes positive 3x? Well, that's plus 3. And just to make sure, 3 times 2 does make 6. And now all we do is combine this together. So we're going to take the bracket, which is x plus 2, and multiply that by x plus 3. And we've just solved this quadratic expression over here. So now let's go on to another example. And in this case, a is also 1, b is equal to 9, and c is equal to 20. So again, which two numbers will multiply to give 1 times 20, which is 20, and add to give 9? Well, if we take 4 and 5 and we add them, we get 9. And if we multiply them, we also get 20. Now you may be thinking, what is the method of working out which two numbers you will need, and it's just either method of trial and error or knowing your times tables that you can just quickly think through all the possible combinations and then pick the two correct ones. So in this situation, it's 4 and 5. And again, we're going to split this up. So we're going to have x squared plus 4x plus 5x plus 20. And you can see here 4x plus 5x does make 9x. And we're going to factorize this and this separately. So in this one, the highest common factor is x, and we need to multiply that by x, and then plus 4, so that we get x squared and 4x. And this bracket automatically transfers over to here. And what times x makes plus 5x? Well, that's plus 5. And just to make sure, 5 times 4 does make 20. So we're going to take this bracket here, x plus 4, and this next bracket, x plus 5. That's great. So that's this one factorized. Let's move on to this one, which actually introduces a negative sign. So here, as before, a is 1. Here, though, b is actually minus 6. And our c will be 5. Okay, so which two numbers will multiply to give 5, but add to equal minus 6? It could be minus 5 and minus 1, because if you multiply minus 5 and minus 1, you will get 5, and minus 5 take away 1 is minus 6. So it's negative 1 and negative 5. Now we're going to have to be careful when writing this out. So it's just going to have x squared minus x, so that's the minus 1 there, minus 5x plus 5. And we're going to factorize them separately as before. So we'll have x as the highest common factor, and x times x makes x squared. And for this, to make x into minus x, we just need it to be multiplied by minus 1. And as before, the bracket does transfer over. So x minus 1 is there. And to make minus 5x from x, we need to multiply it by minus 5. And just to make sure, minus 5 times minus 1 does make 5. So now all that's left to do is to bring the brackets together. So we're going to have x minus 1 from here and x minus 5 from there. Ooh. X minus 5, like that. And that's that one factorized. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to a few more complex examples where the coefficient of x squared here is a negative number, and when it's more than 1. Okay, so these are more difficult examples of quadratic equations to factorize, but if we just use the same method, we'll be completely fine. So here, it's negative x squared. So that just means a equals minus 1. That means b equals positive 7, and c is minus 10. So we need to find two numbers that when multiplied give a times c, so minus 1 times minus 10, which is 10, and when add make 7. Well, thinking about it, 2 plus 5 makes 7, and 2 times 5 makes 10. So the answer is 2 and 5. And before we actually do anything, we're going to have to split up this term here. So minus x squared, remember this negative sign here, plus 2x plus 5x minus 10. And just as before, this and this. So now, what's the highest common factor? Well, it's x. And to make x into minus x, we're going to multiply it by minus x. And then we're going to add 2. And this transfers over, so it's minus x plus 2. And to make minus x into positive 5x, we're going to multiply it by minus 5. So minus 5 times minus x makes plus 5x, and minus 5 times 2 makes minus 10. And now we're going to put them together. So you're going to have x minus 5 there. And for this, we can just rearrange it so that it becomes 2 minus x, which just looks neater than minus x plus 2. So that's been factorized there. Now here is an example where our coefficient of x is not 1 or minus 1, but it's actually a high number, so 2. So we're going to use the same method as before. So we're just going to have a equaling 2, b equals 5, and c equals minus 3. And in this situation, what two numbers multiply to give a and c? So a times c is minus 6, and add to give 5. Well, 6 take away 1 is 5, and 6 times minus 1 is minus 6. So the answer is 6 and minus 1, because they multiply to give minus 6 and add to give 5. So we're going to split this up, and it's going to be 2x squared, and for this one I'm going to put plus 6x minus x minus 3. And as before, we're going to factorize this and this separately. So in this case, our highest common factor is actually 2x. And to make 2x squared, we need to multiply by x. And to make 6x, we need to multiply this by 3. And this bracket carries over to here. And to make minus x from x, we need to multiply by minus 1. And just to make sure that that works, minus 1 times plus 3 makes minus 3. So that's fine. And now we're going to put the brackets together. So 2x minus 1 and x plus 3. All done. And onto this example, where not only is our coefficient of x squared a number higher than 1, but it's also negative. And as before, this method will also work for this. So a here is minus 3, and b here is 1. Remember that there's an invisible 1 there. And c is 10. Now we need to find two numbers that multiply to give minus 30 and add to give 1. Well, we can already see that it's going to be 6 and 5, but where does the minus sign go? Well, 6 times 5 does make 30, but we need to make sure that they add to give 1. So it's going to be 6 and minus 5. So 6 times minus 5 makes negative 30, and 6 plus negative 5 makes 1. And just like before, we're going to split up the x term there, this one here. So it's going to be minus 3x squared plus 6x minus 5x plus 10. Now notice how even though I can actually put the 6 and the 5x other way around, I've picked to put it this way around because I can see that 6 and 3 are multiples and 5 and 10 are multiples. So it just makes this factorization step a little easy for us, but it does give you the same answer whichever way around you do it. So here, our highest common factor is actually 3x. And to make minus 3x squared from 3x, I'm just going to multiply it by minus x. And to make 3x into 6x, we need to multiply by positive 2. And just like before, this bracket will carry over. So minus x plus 2. And to make minus x into minus 5x, we're going to multiply by positive 5. And just to make sure that that works, plus 5 times plus 2 does make 10. And for this, we're just going to put down the brackets together. So it's 3x plus 5. And for this, I'm just going to switch around the 2 and the minus x. So it becomes 2 minus x. And that's been factorized as well. And just notice you can use the FOIL method of expansion for these double brackets. And when you expand it, if you do get the same answer as this, you know that you've done all of your working out correctly and your answer is also correct. And in the next section, we're going to do some practice questions on this. Okay, so these are another 3 quadratic expressions to practice on. And for this, we need to make 2 numbers that add to give -9 and multiply to give 1 times 18, which is 18. Well, if we have -3 and -6, they do add to give -9, and -3 times -6 becomes 18 because the negatives cancel each other out. So we can just rewrite this as x squared minus 3x minus 6x plus 18. And we're going to take the highest common factor for this. So it's x, and that needs to be multiplied by x, and this needs to be multiplied by -3. And this bracket, as before, carries over like that. And to make -6x from x, we need to multiply by -6. And just to check, -6 times -3 does give 18. And now it's just a question of putting the brackets together. So it's x minus 3 multiplied by x minus 6. And this next example here has a negative x squared coefficient. And this is the same method as before. So we need 2 numbers that will add to give 10 and multiply to give AC. Now A is -1, C is -21, so AC is -1 times -21, which is just 21. And the 2 numbers in this case will be 3 and 7, because 3 plus 7 is 10, and 3 times 7 is 21. So we're just going to split them up. So -x squared plus 3x plus 7x minus 21. And then we're going to factorize. So our highest common factor is x. And to make -x squared, we're going to multiply by -x. And then to make positive 3x, we need to multiply by 3. And move this bracket here. So -x plus 3. And to make positive 7x from -x, we need to multiply by -7. So that works. And -7 times 3 does make -21. So now it's just a case of putting the brackets together. So it's just x minus 7. And we're going to rearrange this to become 3 minus x. Although if you were to leave it like this is still correct. And for our last example of this video, we have an x squared coefficient where a is 2. So here we need 2 numbers that will add to give 7 and multiply to give a times c, which is 12. Well, we can see that these 2 numbers are going to be 3 and 4. So let's just write out 2x squared plus, and I could put 3x here, but I'm going to actually select to put 4x and then do 3x plus 6. And that's because I can see that 3 and 6 are multiples and 4 and 2 are multiples. And then we're going to factorize. So our highest common factor is 2x. So it's just 2x there. And to make 2x squared, we're going to multiply by x. And to make 4x, we need to multiply by 2. And we're going to take this bracket across. And to make 3x from x, it's going to be multiplied by positive 3. And then we're going to have plus 3 times plus 2 to make 6. So that's correct. And then we're going to put the brackets together. So it's 2x squared plus 3 and x plus 2. And that's been factorized. And just to demonstrate what happens if I were to swap these around, well then we would have, so if I just draw a line there, well we would have 2x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 6. Yeah. And then we would have our highest common factor would actually just be x, because 2 and 3 are both prime and they're not multiples of each other. So to make 2x squared, we would have 2x. And to make 3x, we would just have 3. Already we can see that this bracket is actually here. And if we just move this across, to make 4x from 2x, it's just plus 2. And then 2 times 3 is 6. So we're going to have, as before, 2x plus 3 and x plus 2. So that's why you can see that they do have the same outcome. However, sometimes it's just easier for factorization to put the ones that you know will factorize nicely first.